And the podcast straight from the horse doctor's mouth. And today we're going to talk about all things legs. I'm going to send out a special thank you to our patrons before we start, because without you guys, we can't do what we do. So thank you very much for all you do. All right, let's talk about legs. And you probably think I'm going to start here with the leg. We're not. We're starting with the foot. Why is the foot where we're starting? Because this is the most important thing to keep horse legs happy. Feet need to be properly balanced so that the forces coming down the body don't put undue strain on all of these structures up and down the leg and cause problems later on. So pay very, very, very close attention to your horse's feet to keep their legs happy. This is going to be a shameless plug for an app that I have nothing to do with called Hoof Map, H-O-O-F-M-A-P-P. It's a great visual for if your horse's foot is balanced or not. You can download it on Android or Apple, take a picture of your horse's foot, go from there, and it'll help you determine the best balance for your horse's foot. So again, starting with feet, the most important thing for keeping legs happy. All right, if you're not sure about feet, the word hoof map that I used, or any of the things that are in there, see our hoof video that we made about a year ago, I believe now. So yeah, look for the hoof video for all things hoof, and that'll help you with that. What's going on down here. So let's talk about what's in here, the leg that we're looking at. We've got a bunch of muscles up here above what we refer to the knee, which is actually not a knee. It's the equivalent to our wrist. And then, because horses are weird, there are no muscles from here down. It's all tendons, ligaments, and bones. So we've got what we call the extensors here. These are the muscles responsible for this. We have the flexors here, and those are the muscles responsible for this. Running down the back of the leg, we have the tendons and ligaments that are attached to these flexors. So right here, we've got the superficial digital flexors on the back of the leg. The deep digital flexor is the next one forward. We have a little guy called the check ligament between the two. Can't really see it on a leg, but it's there, I promise. Then we have the suspensory ligament. We have an extensor tendon that runs down the front of the leg that helps kind of flip the foot forward. We've then got the fetlock joint. Oops, I forgot again. In here we have splint bones. Those are going to become important in a minute. Gigi's you can't really see because she has never done anything super stupid to make hers break. But splint bones right here, got fetlock joint and all of its associated ligaments. One of the big ones in the fetlock joint is what we call a collateral, and it helps keep the joint straight like this. So it prevents that side-to-side movement on joints that shouldn't move side to side. And then we have the pastern. Big thing down here again, we've got all of these guys carrying on down into the back of the pastern joint. And then the foot, as I said, we've got the foot episode to see for that. So that's a little bit about what's in here from top to bottom from an anatomy standpoint. Let's talk a little bit about what happens when forces are wrong on the leg and why the foot is so important. The biggest thing I see is the toe being too far out in front of the leg, causing the foot, the heel back here to be crushed. When that happens, you're taking this entire leg and you're pushing it forward a little bit, and you're putting every one of these tendons in stretch all the time. So they're constantly like this. The other thing that happens then, first off, they're always in stretch, right? That's never good. Then, as the horse brings its leg forward and puts its foot down, they're not where they're designed to be from a mechanical standpoint. And so you send strain all the way up this leg. And the place where the strain gets kind of concentrated the worst is right back here on the superficial and the deep digital flexor in particular from too long a toe. We're going to talk about suspensory in a minute. but it's where we will see basically body injuries in these, where the tendons snap because they can't handle that pressure. If the heel is too low, which is what happens when the toe is too long, the fetlock drops way too far when the horse takes that step and puts weight on their leg at that moment, what we call stance phase, where they put the weight onto the foot as they're moving. And that asks these to go farther than they're mechanically able to do, which causes huge problems. The other thing that happens, and this is usually the first indication that you've got a problem, the check ligament, which is right here, kind of goes from here to here. And its job, it hooks from the back of the knee to the deep digital flexor. And the check ligament's job is to literally check the deep digital flexor and say, whoa, 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 you're going too far. Let me kind of grab you and say, nope, don't go there. So it is usually the first thing that we'll see that's an indication that mechanically we have things in the limb that are not going right. We'll see horses who get a little bit of swelling there. Maybe they're a little sore when you run your hand down, something like that, that tells us we need to reevaluate the mechanics of what's going on. The suspensory ligament becomes affected by the long toe, low heel as well, and can often be the canary in the coal mine because it does not like being chronically stretched. It hates it. In fact, the top, the origin of the suspensory, will very quickly show us that it's got some soreness in there if you're paying attention. One of the ways that I do that is I'll pick the limb up and I take my thumb and I press right here on inside and outside. So I'll do outside, hold it for a moment, let's see how they walk off. I'll do the same thing on the inside, right up at the top here, and see if they're sore to that. If they are, it's probably a good time to call that vet that you have a great relationship with and see what's going on. We can also have similar problems from the front of the leg. So Gigi here is pretty straight down through the leg. If she wasn't, let's say she toed out, you would see that as she stepped when she walked, she would hit the ground with the outside of her foot first. You can imagine, if you kind of practice that, that stretches everything on this side. These horses are really prone to problems with the collateral ligaments on the side of the fetlock and on the side of the foot. So making sure the forces are good all the way around your horse's foot is, again, the best thing you can do to keep the leg happy. One of the reasons that I chose Gigi to be today's model is because she has some things going on her hind legs. And one of them is a wind puff on this leg. Now, a wind puff is a swelling in the tendon sheath that goes around the deep digital flexor and the superficial digital flexor as they come around the back of the fetlock. Most of her swelling is due to this injury right here that she had as a young horse. Slight rabbit hole here. See how this injury comes down almost to the tendon sheath? If your horse does a similar thing, you need to call your veterinarian right away, because the laceration into the tendon sheath is a life-threatening emergency. But I digress. Anyway, on Gigi, it created some scar tissue within her tendon sheath that has left her with what we call a wind puff. Now, most people will discount a wind puff and say it's no big deal. But if you see one appear on your horse suddenly, you definitely want to call your veterinarian. They are an early indication that there's something going on within the structures inside the tendon sheath. We often see them when we have like a little tiny lesion in the deep digital or superficial digital flexor, something we can manage. We'll see a little tiny swelling. So again, if you see swellings, even if people say, oh, that's a wind puff, that's really important to talk to your veterinarian about, because it's an early indication that there's something going on. This tendon sheath goes from here all the way to here. So we can see swelling even on the lower part of the pastern. So pay very close attention to what's going on your horse's limbs and if there's any change. Let's talk about the myth that is boots and other things that we put on the bottom of horses' feet. 99.9% of what these are supposed to do, they don't do. No boot is going to support the functions of the tendons and ligaments. There's way too much force coming from up here to down here for any of these products to support the leg. It just does not work that way. So don't think that any of these, no matter what they claim, what brand they are, anything, none of them support. What they do provide is protection, and that is really, really, really important. And there are a myriad of options to do that. My least favorite is the polo wrap. First off, if you put this on incorrectly, you can do pretty significant damage to a limb by not applying it properly, allowing sections of it to tighten down on tendons and ligaments and compromise blood flow. It also allows for a lot of heat buildup in here as horses are working. So polo wraps are my least favorite. Sorry guys, I know they're pretty, they look really cool. They don't provide a lot of protection because what we're looking for is protection from this leg hitting this leg or a hind leg coming up and hitting a front leg. Not a lot of protection going on from here if you think about it. I mean, take one of these, wrap it on your arm and see if you'd really want to hit it with a hammer because that's what you're asking to have happen. And I think you're going to say no. Next we have this one's even called, oh, this is a sports medicine boot, which makes it sound like it's going to really, really do all kinds of things. But where I really, really, really like a boot like this is if you're in a sport where legs are going everywhere. I think, you know, barrel racing, cross-country eventing, this isn't quite the proper boot for that, but you know, a boot that goes all the way around the leg is really, really important in those because you're going to protect from concussion all over the place. My favorite is on any of these types of boots, they call this guy right here the suspensory support strap. It's not, don't think it is. It's not preventing anything. But what these do is a great job protecting the limb all the way around top to bottom from concussion coming from anywhere. So again, if you're in one of those sports where the legs tend to go all over the place, these are a great option. If you're in a sport, again, like cross country, where you may be going over solid obstacles, where the horse may hit the front of their limb, these are good options. That concussion hits and it's dissipated by the products that are in here. So again, looking for something that offers protection all the way around from concussion is a big deal. The next option we have are what are common in my sport of jumping, and that's the open front. So these come around the leg, oops, and they leave the front open. And what this does is it allows the horse to feel when they hit the light poles that we have in show jumping. So they get that tactile feedback that that's not what we want. But in show jumping, our poles are pretty light, and it's unlikely that they're going to cause the damage of, say, a big cross-country jump that's a giant tree on the ground that has not as much give as a show jumping fence. What they do provide, though, is protection down the back of the limb. What we worry about here is the back foot coming up and touching these tendons when the horse is in full stance. So as the horse is this way, right, like they've hit the ground, they have all their weight on this leg, we don't want that hind leg to come up and even touch the tendons and ligaments here. The tiniest touch with the massive amount of forces that they have can just annihilate all of these tendons and ligaments. So while I'm anti-boot for support, I am not anti-boot for protection. So you really want to make sure that you evaluate what you need for your particular sport. The other option we have for hind limbs, I realize I'm putting this on a front leg. It's also, I'm putting it on the wrong front leg, but we'll pretend, right? So we have ankle boots that can go on hind limbs, and they just protect the ankles. And again, I realize this is on the wrong foot, grab the wrong one, oops. But where these are super helpful is if you have a horse who's really close behind and does a lot of brushing. That's not necessarily the end of the world once in a while. The problem is that chronic brushing sets up the inside of the fetlock to be less compliant to movement. You get low-level scar tissue being built up on a regular basis, and that stiffens all of these structures so they don't take up and down. and they don't take side to side as well. So if you have a horse that has conformation that's really close behind, and some of them are, you know, like thoroughbreds are commonly that way, you want to make sure that they get ridden in a boot like this that protects the ankle. Now again, this is sort of the show jumper version, and that the front is open so that if they kind of hit themselves, they feel it and they get that feedback. If you're doing a sport where the legs go all over, then you want to make sure that you've got something that covers the limb all the way around and absorbs concussion. You also want to make sure on your boots, for example, these don't particularly fit her. These are Ernie's boots, and he has a much larger leg. So you want to make sure that you have a boot that fits snugly, but not too tight. You should always be able to get a finger down in between with a little bit of effort. That's my other problem with polo wraps. If you don't do it right, like I said, bad things happen. And you want to check your straps on a regular basis to make sure that they've still got hold to them and they haven't worn out the elastic and it has no give to it. So the other thing that I check on boots also is the inside, and after every ride I make sure that it's clean and that I don't have any, you know, stickers, burrs, anything like that, any buildup of arena dirt in there that can be irritating to the skin. So boots are great. Boots have a place. They don't do all the things you think they do. All right, after feet, the next thing that is the most important thing for you to do to keep your horse's legs happy is to keep your horse fit. Being tired is a huge risk factor for tendon and ligament injuries. Everything in the system is set to work at just the right spot to handle all those forces coming down from the top, going down into the tendons and ligaments, and the forces coming back up from the ground. When things get tired, like the muscles in particular, they no longer hold everything as tight as they're supposed to. And so your horse who's able to handle landing off that jump or cantering or turning that barrel, all of a sudden that muscle doesn't hold things where it's supposed to, and things go farther in a direction than Mother Nature intended to. And that's a big place for us to get tendon and ligament injuries. So keeping in mind what your sport demands. So if you are an eventer, there's lots of stuff out there on keeping your event horse as fit as they need to be. Trot sets, canter sets, all of the things to do that. For the rest of us, there aren't great guidelines out there. Working with your veterinarian can help you, but one of the things that I recommend is doing the thing you need to do. So let's say you're running a barrel pattern, right? Do a practice run of a barrel pattern and see, does your horse come back down on their heart rate and respiratory rate to normal ranges after one run, just one run, within about 5 minutes. They should come back really fast from one run. So you're not asking them to be on the edge of exhaustion, you haven't hauled them anywhere, you're doing this at home. They should do this perfectly. Like, this should be super easy. Now, when you're at an event, see how that same thing happens. You know, pay attention to what your horse is doing and pay attention to all the things that you've done leading up to there. For example, if you go to a horse show, your horse may be in a stall. You've got to get them up to the show arena. You do some warm up. Maybe you hang out at the arena for a prolonged period of time. All of those things are adding work to the limb and adding to a level of exhaustion. And you may not have taken those into account. So really think about that process. Now look at what your sport demands. For example, I do show jumping. So yes, I need to go in and canter around and jump somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 15 jumps. But I also need to warm my horse up. And there's walking, trotting, cantering, and jumping involved in that. So I need to pay close attention to what my sport demands. And then I need to look at how my horse is doing when I'm at home doing exercise. It may be that adding a little bit of trot or canter just from a fitness standpoint will do what you need to help your horse build those things up. One of the best ways that you can keep your horse fit is cross training. And what's cross training? For most of us, it's trail riding. It's getting out of the arena and going over a variety of footings, from deep sand to hard packed to water to mud, you name it, within reason. I'm not telling you that you need to go find a patch of quicksand and see if you can survive it. But finding different footings so that in a low concussion environment, walking, you can ask the body to adapt to all of these different footing types is a great way to help the legs stay trained to do what we need them to do. The other thing that happens on a trail ride is you come to obstacles that haven't been set at perfectly placed distances, and the body has to think about how to handle those obstacles. So trail riding is fantastic. But you say you're an endurance rider. What should you do then? Dressage. Dressage, whether you're a Western pleasure, a show jumper, you name it, no matter what you do, dressage is a great way to also put your horse into more control of where their body is. So doing it in both ways, where there's less control and where there's more control of the limbs, is a great way to train your horse and to keep the limbs happy and ready for anything that happens in the competition environment. Another really great low concussion way to help your horse maintain leg and foot fitness is balance pads. Now, we did a whole video on this, and these are just Amazon balance pads. That's all they are. Cost about 20 bucks a piece. But they're a great thing for your horse to stand on while standing in the cross ties and getting ready or getting done with a ride, to help them strengthen all of those little tendons, ligaments, and muscles that manage the side-to-side stability. All you do, stand them on the pad, do that for about 5 minutes a day. Works fantastic, right? Yeah. Let's talk about after the event. How do you take care of these legs afterwards? Well, one of the big things you need to do is check legs after you do every ride or competition. And you want to make sure that you're evaluating, are there any nicks, cuts, anything like that? Is there any indication that there was concussion to the limb that you need to deal with? You know, is there anything that needs the attention of a veterinarian or needs closer attention from you? But following that, the best thing you can do is make sure that you wash the leg if you've been in any of the synthetic footings to get any of that footing out of the hair. It can be really irritating to the skin. So make sure you wash the leg really well. Spending some time with the hose, just rinsing legs is really good. That water coming down helps to move heat out of the limb, and just the action of a hose kind of squirting on a leg also helps to pull edema out. From there, if it's been a particularly hard day of competition, one of the things that I highly recommend is ice in some form. This is an ice boot, and you just put it in the freezer ahead of time. Gigi does not like ice boots. And then this one happens to Velcro on. One of the cool things about horses is the way they're designed, they don't get frostbite. That's pretty cool if you ask me. But that means that you can leave ice on for quite a bit of time and not be too concerned about causing frostbite. I do recommend, if you're using a boot like this, that you have the leg wet before you put it on. It does help to get the cool from the boot and into the skin a little bit better. That water kind of carries the coolness in a little bit better. And I typically leave something like this on for 30 minutes or so. Much longer than that, you don't necessarily need. You can also do ice in buckets. You know, there's various different icing options out there, but ice is sort of magical in what it does. It reduces inflammatory cytokines in the limbs. It helps pull out edema. There's little tiny tears or injuries that are going on. It does wonderful things to reduce inflammation to those areas. So I do recommend ice. Other than that, I think making sure that your horse gets a lot of movement the next day. I think one of the things that we do at horse shows is we often end up with our horses in stalls, and we compete them hard, and then they're in a stall for a long time. And sure, we'll put leg wraps and all sorts of things on them. They don't always do all the things we think they do. In fact, I'm not a very good leg wrapper at horse shows, because one of the things I worry about in Florida is that I'm really keeping heat in the leg, and that's not what I want to do. So looking at what's the best answer for your horse when they're in a stall at a horse show may be a great conversation to have with your veterinarian. I personally like putting socks for horses on mine at horse shows because it helps to give them a little bit of that compression while allowing the leg to breathe. And one of the reasons we'll see stocking up at horse shows is we are taking these horses and we're putting them in a stall for a prolonged period. Taking a horse out for walks, you know, all those sorts of things are great ways to keep the legs happy at an event. But ice, baby, it's a great way. All right, hopefully we have answered all of your leg questions. If we haven't, drop them down below and we'll get them answered as fast as we can. And for more information, you can check out all of Tony, our office cat's blogs on springhillequine.com, and I'm sure we've got a podcast or two about these topics. It's straight from the horse doctor's mouth. Once again, thank you to our patrons for helping support us in all that we do. Can't do what we do without you.